Hey, Lori, welcome to Quantum Messages. Thanks for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Lori and I have been friends for a long time, and we've gone down multiple rabbit holes in the past with our conversations. And she has so many certifications. She does many, many things. She is a Master Firewalking Instructor. She is a shaman, a life coach, a minister, and is certified in hypnosis and Reiki. Lori, since you do so many of these things and you hold many hats, please tell us your story.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me on. And yes, we've had some really great conversations that I'm sure all your listeners would love to experience. So I'm glad we're getting to do this to give them a little taste. Um, I, you know, here, the reason why so many certifications, I'll just start there, is when I became a life coach, I realized really fast that, my favorite saying that I have of myself is you can't build a whole house with a hammer. You have to have a lot of tools. And so as I began to work with people, I wanted to be able to have tools to help serve them in whatever area they needed. Um, Not necessarily a one-stop shop, but I also didn't want to get caught where I just couldn't help them and I'd have to refer them or things like that. So my story started, I've always been motivational. I've always been a leader. That has always been a thing. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. You're just
Okay.
on. You're good.
Like just having technology is not one of my things, by the way. So the spirit world I'm good in. So you know I've always been that person. I played sports. My parents were really big on exposing me to many things, whether all sports, but like lots of things. They wanted me to get to experience and have that. Both my parents have an adventurous spirit also. And during that time period, though, for some reason, when I was in high school, and I still can't quite put my finger on it, I was having some identity struggles, might be the best way to say it. And I was playing sports, doing really well, had a good household, everything was great, but I felt very despondent, and that led to feeling suicidal. I just didn't want to be here. And sometimes I look back at like maybe it's because I knew I grew up Catholic, and I was very devout. I was very much connected to spirit, to the Blessed Mother, who's Jesus's mother. I felt very connected to all of them. In fact, when I was in the eighth grade, I had an apparition of her. One time I was praying and meditating, and I saw her, and I still don't know what she said to me. But it felt really special. And, so I was really devout, and yet here I was suicidal, and I wasn't quite sure what that was about, but I didn't want to kill myself because, I had the mindset of I'm going to screw that up too. And I'm going to end up completely paralyzed. And then, I'm going to have to live my whole life where I can't communicate or I can't do anything. And also the Catholic Church says you're going to hell if you kill yourself. So I really had a fear of that. And I really didn't want to die. I just didn't know why I felt so sad. I was just really sad. Looking back, I think it was the world and like I said, my mission or whatever it is, and it felt big. And so what ended up happening was I got this once in a lifetime epic trip to go to the Grand Canyon to whitewater raft it. My mother had been childhood friends with a man who had been a guide down there for 30 years. And one Christmas he came when our whole family was together and we talked to him about it. The next year we get an invitation to go. I didn't know how special that was. And we rafted the Grand Canyon. The first time we did that, it was right after my high school graduation. And we rafted the whole canyon. It's the most amazing experience. And what a great adventure. And I got to do it with my mom. Then the next year he said, "Do you want to go again?" And we said yes. Now I was still had suicidal ideation. Like this was my, you know what, if I don't like it here, I'm just going to hit a button and be done and leave. I had this back door out. Well, we get into the Grand Canyon, and on the second day, we are rafting, and the raft flips. And we were down there. They only classify it to a class 10. It's the biggest rapid. In rest of North America, it's class 5. Is the biggest. But in the Grand Canyon, and they're so big, they'll go to a 10. And that day it was a 10. So you can imagine it was the most tumultuous water. It was really rough. And our raft flipped. And I found myself just instantly underneath the water. It was 34-degree water. I was in complete shock, but I was stuck under the raft. And I remember looking up and just kind of frozen in time. And I was about 8 feet below the raft. And I could see all our gear. I could see there were 3 of us in the raft. So the woman who was in the raft, I see her get out. I see her float out, and there's the boatman, Doug, was not there. But I'm looking and I'm like, finally, like I woke up like, oh, I'm under the raft in water. And so I was trying to hold my breath, and I ended up floating up and hitting all that gear, and I was stuck in the gear. But you always hear you'll automatically start breathing, but until you experience it, it's very different. And I started breathing in water, and I could not stop myself from breathing. My body just couldn't hold it anymore. And it was extremely scary. I, had a feeling I was dying, that I was completely stuck. And I'm still in the rapid, so it's all bouncy. So eventually I don't know how long I was under there, but I reached and grabbed something and pulled myself out. And when I got out of the raft, I took a big deep breath, you can imagine, but then the raft ran me over. And these are big rafts, and they displace 5,000 pounds of water. They have a lot of gear in them. They're real heavy. So it ran me over. I'm stuck again. I come back out. And this time I'm like, I'm getting away from the raft, right? So I start swimming. You're in a live fish. You can't really swim. So I'm starting to try to swim. I'm in a rapid, and I see this whirlpool. And what happens in rivers is you see the current goes this way, and then you have what's called an eddy. There's an eddy fence because the current goes back upstream. So it will create like a whirlpool in these intense situations. And I see this big whirlpool, and I'm going right for it, and it sucks me down. And when it did, everything went black. Everything was black. And this was daytime. And it was the most peaceful, like there was nothing. There was no sound. There was nothing. It was just like I was suspended in space. And I heard a voice say, if you want to let go, you can. It won't look like you killed yourself. It'll look like an accident. And I remember having this moment, and I was like, no, I want to live. But it wasn't out of fear, because there was no fear there. It was really weird. It was like I was just suspended in space. It wasn't cold. It wasn't anything. And as soon as I said, no, I want to live, I immediately started saying a Hail Mary, because I'm Catholic. I don't know. I just kicked in. I like, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou. And right then, this whitest light came. I could see it coming through the whirlpool. Looked like a big tornado, right? But there was this white light, and I go shooting out into out and back above the water. And it's almost like, I say this a lot because it's almost like God was like, are you sure? Because I had to then swim to the raft. I had several other rescue attempts. The people in the other boats were ahead of us. They missed me to rescue me. And I ended up swimming 6 rapids, 3 miles, with holding on to this raft in 34-degree water. I was beat up every time I went into a rapid. I was being sucked under. I was holding on to the raft. You have to get to the back, because if you're in the front, your head's like an egg. I didn't have a helmet on. But even if I had, I mean, there's so much force. So I had to fight, and I had to survive, and it was very, very scary. The last rapid I went into, I remember thinking, I can't do this. I looked and saw it. You can hear the roar. I was like, I got nothing left. And so I started screaming, Mom, because I could see my mom. She was behind me, and she's standing up in the raft yelling. I can't hear her. I'm in the water. It's loud. And I yelled, Mom, and I just kept yelling, Mom. It was like guttural. And I saw her put her hands on her head. She had it on, and she went like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I die, she'll never forgive herself. And I was like, I got to find something else in the tank. And that last rapid, I don't even remember. The next thing I knew, I heard my name being called. I was clenched onto the rope like this with my head down and floating with the raft. And it was Mom and Jim, her boatman, the guy that she'd known for her whole life. And I remember saying, can I swim to you? And they said, if you can. And I started swimming because I thought, I'm going to die if I don't. I'm afraid there's another rapid coming. And I they pulled me into the raft, and I just remember looking down and my whole body was blue. I was like, I'm blue. And I wasn't shivering, nothing. And the next thing that I remember is waking up naked in the sleeping bag with my mom. That's the best way when someone has hypothermia to get somebody warm. And when I woke up, I started just talking incessantly. And she luckily had been a trainer for the state of Tennessee and she's a motivational person. She started calming me down and helping me breathe. And she said it took an hour and a half for me she wasn't even sure if I was there. Like, she was like, I just didn't move for an hour and a half. But here's the craziness, besides all of that, well, let me say this first. That changed my whole life. After that, I looked at life completely different. I knew I must be here for a reason because I survived it. And I knew that, like, little things didn't bother me anymore. I was like, oh my gosh, if I could do the Grand Canyon, this is nothing. This is not life or death.
And it was a near death experience that you had, right?
Yes, I should have died. It was the first one. I had many. This is the first one. Jim, the next day, told me, he walked with me. And I actually found a rock that I gave to him that had an angel's wings. It looked just like an angel. I looked down and picked it up. I was like, this is for you. But he walked with me and he said, you should be dead. And I said, what? And he had people die in the canyon. And I said, why do you say that? He said, well, you were in the water over 28 minutes. Now, they knew when we went in because we had scouted the rapid, right? And he said, I kept telling your mother, we have to get to her. We have to get to her. He said, he's an EMT. And he said, most people are in cardiac arrest at 14 minutes in that cold water. And
how old were you, Lori?
I was 19.
Okay. So you were an adult size.
Oh, I know.
Adult.
I stopped growing after 4th grade. I mean, I just, I'm 5'2". So yeah, I was a full grown, exactly how I was going to be. And when he told me I should have been dead, I said, he said, you should have gone into cardiac arrest. I said, I'm glad I didn't know that. I had enough to worry about. So, that's that mindset place. Like, if I had thought I'm going to die because I've been in the water too long, it would have just added to the list of stay away from the rocks, keep your feet up, get behind the raft. Like, my list of emergency stuff he had taught us, stay with the raft as number one, because the rocks, feet wedged, the river will just take you. So, and then I told the story to somebody else who said, yeah, she was sailing with someone and the water was 34 degrees. And when he went in the water, he died at 2 minutes from cardiac arrest because of the cold. Wow. It just killed him. And I was like, whoa. Okay, this just validates not just the experience of, I still don't know how I lived after breathing in all that water.
Mary?
Yes, she saved me. And you know what? The Catholic Church teaches you that. If you ask, she'll come. And we, my mother asked me, would you like to helicopter out? Now, we didn't have walkie-talkies. So truly, like, I had no help. Like, they had no help. They're in the Grand Canyon. There's nobody. There's no cell service. There's no one. And they only, at that time, would allow 2 rafts down a day. They regulate how many are on the river, so it's not a big log jam, right? And so we had no one. And we were like, we were on this little bitty, like, we were in the rocks, and it was not an ideal beach. Like, there was little sand up in the rocks. We slept. The next day, the 2 people who were with us, I never saw them. And during the rescue attempt, which I go into greater detail in my book, I said, where are Kim and Doug? And they were like, don't worry about them. So in my mind, I'm like, they're dead. They're just not wanting to tell me. They don't want to tell me that. The next day, Jim had kept saying, a raft will pick them up. They'll see them on shore, wherever they are, and a raft will pick them up and bring them. So we put the distress signal with our paddles. And sure enough, we heard a motorized rig. They actually have motorized rigs down there. Ours was rowing. And we heard it coming because you can hear it a mile away. And here it comes. And when they came up, we all started crying. Everybody cried because Kim said, we never saw you come out from under the raft. Like when they got out, they looked back, they never saw me come out. They thought that I just drowned underneath, which was happening. And she said, I can't believe you're alive. So mom said, do you want to helicopter out? We can, in a couple of days, we'll be at Phantom Ranch, which is, you know, a really well-known place and people hike in and stuff. And she's like, we can helicopter you out. And I was like, I have to face this. I had 14 more days. I was like, no, if that didn't kill me, like nothing's going to kill me. I mean, at this point, I've been through the worst is what I thought. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. More to come. Oh God.
Yeah. We ended up flipping again.
Wow.
In Lava Falls, which is the most famous rapid in North America. Now, you know, a couple of interesting things about that trip. Oh, there's a lot, but Kim had proved the power of words throughout the whole trip. Now, I didn't know Kim. I did not know her. She was about 30 at the time. And then Doug was our boatman. He was the youngest. And of course, I wanted to ride with them. I rode with Jim and mom the whole first trip, which I love, but I wanted to be with the young kids, right? So I went with them. And in that on that second day, she said, so all this gear stays in. If we flip over, all this gear stays in. And he said, yeah, let's not find that out. And within an hour, we were upside down.
Oh,
then
wow.
she would say, what happens when it rains? And it would start pouring rain. Finally, I was like, Kim, stop creating this stuff. And so when we got to Lava Falls and we scouted it, which is a really long, big rapid, she smacks me on the arm and goes, wouldn't it be cool to say we flipped and swam lava? I was like, no, this would not be cool. And sure enough, that's what happened. I mean, and I was mad, honestly. When we hit the water, I was like, not again, you got to be kidding me, you know. But we the fun part is we rescued ourselves. We all got back to the raft. The raft hadn't flipped upside down. It just flipped enough to throw us. And then we climbed in and self-rescued. So it was kind of like a reclaiming our power moment. Although my poor mom, I'm sure it took years off her life. I'm sure.
So Lori, it sounds like this like near-death experience was an initiation for you, especially since you were prior somewhat suicidal, right? Or had suicidal thoughts.
Well, I had attempted suicide. It was kind of a half-hearted attempt. Well, it wasn't half-hearted at the time. I shouldn't say that. Yeah, I had two friends and we were out driving around in the country. Me and this other girl had been drinking a beer. And I remember whatever happened, I just decided we got enough, you know, honestly, when you're suicidal, you kind of look for opportunities to leave. At least I did. So we're out in the country, we get into a fight, and because I had hung off this cliff, kind of daring life to take me, honestly. I was like, she's like, what are you doing? So she gets mad at me. And I stormed off, walking up a hill. There's a bridge across a river. And this is out in the country, but I see a truck coming. And so I just stood in the road. I just stood there. I was like, it's just going to hit me. Thing I know, she tackles me and I'm in the other side of the street and I get up, we get into a big fist fight. And so had she not been there, that truck would have hit me. And because they can't see you at night. And this was right after that. And but this woke me up. I just, you know, I can't fully describe exactly what happened, but the Grand Canyon is such a holy place too. Yeah. You know, the rest of the trip was, every day was something magical. We had one night, we were laying in our tents. So you sleep in tents because there's a Mojave rattlesnake is down there. And if it bites you, you're dead in 3 minutes. And we had no we had no pin. I mean, this is that kind of adventure. This is like
serious.
Serious. So we're
life
sleeping.
or death.
It really is. And if, you know, when you get up in the middle of the night, you got to watch where you walk because, you know, you are in nature and there's no help. There's no 911. But none of that scares me. I just got to say that. Like, I've lived in the woods. We've horseback ridden my whole life. We had a farm. Like, you know, this nature's where I feel the biggest, you know, calmness. So anyway, one night we're all in our tent and mom and I are in our tent. Everybody else is in theirs. And I hear a rattle. Like like my rattle, right? Like this rattle. Like I hear, and it wakes me up. And I opened my eyes and I'm like, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
And so you keep hearing it. We heard it.
Mm-hmm.
Mom heard it. I said, Mom. She's like, I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And where we were, in the Grand Canyon, the walls go straight up thousands of feet. And we were on this little sandy beach, and there's no trails. I mean, you don't go anywhere. If you're on a beach, you either get in the river or you just stay on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get anywhere.
Uh-huh.
So we heard that rattle, and Mom and I listened, and I heard it come down and go all around all of our tents. It wove through all of our tents, and I just laid there still. It wasn't scary. It was a little scary because you're thinking, okay, nobody can get down here. So that my human brain was like, this doesn't make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my higher self was like, of course it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the next morning we get up. Now these are all regular folks who just, doctors and lawyers and whoever that came on this private trip, to go. This isn't a commercial trip, it's private. So they were all hand selected by the guy who it was his permit. We got to go because Jim was the head boatman, and they said you could take 2 people, so he picked us. But the next morning at breakfast, we were like, did you all hear that? Every person heard it. So, later Jim said it was Kokopelli. We're in this holy land of the Hopi and the Anasazi and all of them, they're all here. And there's a place down there that they believe is where all life begins and ends, where the little Colorado comes into the Colorado. And I've swam in that. Like, it's such a spiritual place that you can't help but be changed if you've been down there. Now, from the top, I've never seen it from the top ever. I've only seen it from the bottom, once for 18 days and once for 15. And at some point I'll see it from the top. But,
Yeah.
it's, so I came back completely different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I was different. It's like it shed off all that stuff that was holding me back and all the pain and all the whatever. And I was just more of myself, really. It's not like it shifted me into somebody different. It just found me,
Mm-hmm.
through me. And then 10 years almost to the day, Ani, I had another one, another near death. And what, literally, they're only 9 days apart, which is interesting because that's the completion number.
Yeah.
But I was working on a dude ranch as a wrangler where I took people in the backcountry overnight pack trips, and I took people fly fishing, and we did cattle drives, and I've ridden my whole life. So I would take people, again, guiding, right, on trails. And part of the reason I did that is because I had gone to Peru and hiked the Inca Trail, which was my shaman initiation, and didn't even realize it in 1999. So that was a huge initiation.
Mm-hmm.
That hike.
And this is all before. Are you a firewalker at this time? The 10-year? No. Okay, but you're a shaman at the time. Oh, okay.
Well, it turns out, my friends are like, you've always been this way. So apparently I was always doing shamanic stuff, and didn't know it. Like, I remember back as early as age, I was 5. And the reason I remember it, my grandparents were visiting Nashville, where I was born and raised. And we lived on 3 acres, but it was all a hill. It was like, it's all straight up kind of a mountain. And I would hike in the woods by myself. And I came back from being in the woods, and I had this small sassafras tree about this big that I had pulled up out of the ground. I had a little bitty pocket knife that my mom got me that I had to have at the St. Louis Zoo. And I was 5. So that's how I know I was 5, because we went. And so I was like taking all the outer part of the root off. Nobody told me to do this. I did this. This is what's so interesting. So I did it, and then I was just chewing on it. And my grandfather, who had been hung out, he lived in Wyoming for a while and went and visited the Shoshone Native Americans and became a Native American Indian chief. They gave him an honorary designation. He was there so much. And he looked at me and said, how do you know how to do that? And I said, what? Well, it's like medicine. And he was like, yes, it is sassafras. And I have no, like, that came in with me. So I've been doing
the work,
the whole time without someone telling me exactly what it, putting a name on it.
Right.
And the word shamanism didn't show up till 2000 years ago anyway. We were just medicine people until then. But but so when I was a wrangler on the Dude Ranch, so I had the near death in the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
Then I kind of did life. I had a lot of different jobs. And
Mm-hmm.
then I had a breakup, and
Mm-hmm.
my sister said, why don't you come to Peru? I think it'd be good for you for 2 weeks. And I was like, okay. So I went to Peru, and she's like, we're hiking the Inca Trail. I was like, we're doing what? So we hiked to Machu Picchu. This is before everybody else was doing it. And we did it with a guide, and he explained all the ruins and everything. And that was interesting. That was a tough trip for me. I ended up with a fever on the trip, on the hike. And I feel like it's like was burning off whatever I needed to have cleared off for myself. But I fell in love with Peru and had no idea that that would be the lineage that I would study. During that time, I knew something was happening. But on that trip, I made a decision to go to Colorado and work on a dude ranch, and because that had always been my dream, and I kept putting it off. There's obviously a lot to that story, and I won't go into it here, but I ended up in Colorado working on the dude ranch and started to really realize my gifts, my natural born gifts, which we all have. And I realized how much just who I am help people, which is I had never really fully experienced. I think that was part of my sadness in high school, right? Like I couldn't get to me. But on the dude ranch a couple of times, the owner came to me and was like, you're helping people. And I'm like, helping them out. Cause I'm having a ball with them, taking them in the backcountry and horseback riding. And he told me how a little boy, that I had led all over the mountain, literally led his horse. And we rode, it was the Rocky Mountains. So it was, extreme riding, and how that little boy had been afraid, I guess, before he came to the ranch. And while he was there for the week, we shot guns, we chased cattle, he rode, we fly fished, he did everything with me. We went whitewater rafting, we did a lot of stuff. But I guess his mom had called and said, they had a boat, and that the little boy had been afraid to get in the water, and they quit asking him. He's 7, and they just let him sit, and everybody else would swim. And when they parked the boat this time, he went running and jumped off the bow and jumped in, and the mom freaked out and said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm not afraid anymore. And I find that really interesting, because that's really what I help people with now, is how to overcome fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
How to not let fear take you down. And so when he told me that, I was like, and then I started thinking, well, what if we do this on purpose? What if I take people and but I had no official training yet. At that time period, I had no life. I didn't have any, just life training from what my parents taught me and my whole family and how they are, and that kind of stuff. But at the dude ranch, I did not listen. I got an intuitive hit to not go to the backcountry one day. Typically, I was the one who was the guide, but in this case, I was not the guide. And a family that felt really close to me, was like, would you please come to pack camp, is what we called it, where we overnight and camp out in the backcountry. And I said, sure. And then I kept hearing, you don't need to go. You don't need to go. And a thunderstorm came, knocked the power out at the ranch. And I was like, that's a sign. So I kept getting signs I shouldn't go. In fact, I told one of the wranglers, I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to go, but I've told this family I would go. So out of keeping my word, I went. And when I got to the pack camp, I was tying up a horse. I was helping out. It wasn't my horse. I had my own horse with me, but I was tying up a different horse, and I was standing on a log to do it because I'm short. And I was standing on my tippy toes, and the horse bumped me. And when it did, my arms were in the air, and I slipped, and I could feel that horse coming over behind me. And when I started falling, I yelled, oh God. I thought, this is it. I'm dead. I'm not, you know,
Did
everything
the
slow.
horse spook?
No, what had happened was, so the horse was on this side of me, and I've
Mm-hmm.
got her lead rope, right? And I'm tying it, and I'm up above my head and to a picket line, and
Yeah.
somebody fed her.
Mm-hmm.
And they put down hay. So all she's thinking is eat. She's not looking where
Right.
I am. Right.
Right.
So she went to go eat, and in the
And
process hit me. And it was another wrangler who she shouldn't have been fed, right? Like, let's
right.
focus on one thing at a time. So anyway, when she hit me, when I screamed, I mean, I thought, honestly, this is it. And I landed arms up, face down, and she came over, and she was 1,200 pounds, and landed on my back. And her saddle was on, which I think did the most damage because, it's not soft.
Right.
And, I have no memory again from being crushed to the next memory I have is I'm kneeling, I'm on all fours, I got my hands, and I'm just weeping. I'm just weeping.
Mhm.
One of my friends who saw the whole thing, the one who I had told I shouldn't go to Pat Camp, came running down the hill and grabbed me and was holding me. And I looked back, and Alexis is her name, the horse, she was on the ground. And I said, go check on her. She hadn't even tried to get up. So later I asked my friend, I said, how did I get out from underneath her if she's still on the ground? Because she hit my whole body. And
How did she fall? Like, if she was going to go get food, I don't understand how she fell.
The log that I was standing on.
She tripped on it?
Yep, she tripped
Oh.
over. It was a big log. It was a big aspen log,
Oh.
slippery. There's
Uh-huh.
no bark. The bark is slippery. I'm in cowboy boots. Like,
Right.
so there was no chance of me, and I was on my tippy toes, so there's no chance of me pushing off. But
Right.
she either stepped over the logs. We both had the log was the issue, and
Uh-huh.
that's why she fell over and didn't just catch herself.
Mhm.
She fell over the log too. I
Mhm.
mean, it must have been just as traumatic for her. But my friend said, I said, how did I get out from underneath? And she said, I don't know. I heard you scream, so I looked. She said, I looked and saw that it happen. She said, you lifted your arms up
Mhm.
and you just slid out. She said, I have no way of knowing how you got out. And
Mhm.
later during a meditation, I saw two angels come down, my two friends who had died,
Mhm.
and they grabbed my arms and pulled me out. Because she said, you put your arms up and slid out. There's no way. Like, you didn't crawl out. She's
Mhm.
like, there's no way for you to get out. And honestly, that started the bigger journey for me spiritually. That's because after the first near death, I was like, woo, I'm good. And I just kept working and doing different things. Found my farm, just regular life, I would say.
Mhm.
Um, and then when I went to the dude ranch after that, I was in so much pain. Did not go to the hospital that night. We're on the dude ranch. We're way in the back country, 15 miles from the ranch by horseback. And the next day, the ranch, they're kind of tough people.
Yeah.
And so I started working in the lodge, sitting on ice, and I would cry because I was in so much pain. For 3 days, I just kept working in the lodge. And then they said, we need you to ride. And I said, I'm not riding till I see a doctor. I've got it. Because I was afraid I could be paralyzed.
Mhm.
And so when I went to the doctor, she walked in and just leaned against the wall. This was such a moment for me. And she said, I just have one question. I mean, she didn't ask me anything at that point. She just said, I have one question. And I said, what's that? And she said, why are you alive? And I stopped. She caught me so off guard because you know how doctors are, expected her to come in and do vitals and whatever. And she said, why are you alive? And I said, that's a really good question. I said, I guess I better figure it out because I had a near death 10 years ago too. And I said, I think I need to figure it out so I don't get another wake up call in 10 years. And she said, yeah. And I said, I must have a purpose here. She said, yes. And I said, well, then I better figure it out. And so I spent that's what I've done since then is try, then my own healing happened. And then, I found life coaching and shamanism. I was really set on buying a dude ranch. I wanted to buy one to create a healing retreat center. And so I started gathering tools so that, people will come to me, not just, oh, hey, I know what I'm doing. Like I got life coaching. Then I went and, when you're on the shaman path, you're doing your own work. I mean, let's
Yeah.
face it. I mean, you know that. Any path that you're on that's spiritual that seems like you're going to work with other people, you got to do your own work first. So that took a little bit. I'm still working on myself. And so that's how, that's how I ended up gathering all those tools, really, or why I gathered them.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. 2 near death experiences, definitely. And it's, yeah, there's some serious wake up calls, that happen in our lives that we really need to pay attention to. And unfortunately, if you don't pay attention to them, then the next time it just gets worse and worse and worse. And I've experienced that too multiple times.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and I left this out, and I don't know why, because I always say it, but so after the Grand Canyon, where I'd been suicidal, then I wasn't. My best friend within 6 months killed herself, and I got to experience that side of it, and
Mhm.
it's changed me because in that moment I was like, how did I get out and she didn't? Like, that's been a lot of my driving force, is to help people realize really who they are, so they don't want to leave. You know,
Mhm.
they don't want
Yeah.
to leave.
That's huge. And you do some pretty empowering things. I don't know what you want to get into first, but do you want to talk about the firewalking? And I mean, that's
Sure.
that's huge. Like people overcoming, walking on hot coals, like barefoot.
Right.
How
1200-degree calls.
Yeah, 1,200. So how can you tell us a little bit about the firewalking and
Sure. So firewalking has been, the earliest recorded firewalk was 5,000 years ago. Two Brahmin priests challenged themselves to see who had the most faith of walking on coals. So that's recorded. Since then, we know of 19 countries that do it. And if you Google it, there's like all these countries, and every single person and every single instructor or any country or whoever uses the fire for different reasons. Like in some, it's a religious ceremony, it's an honoring of St. Constantine. In some, it's very corporate, overcoming fear and moving towards your goals. In mine, I blend all of it. I blend that this is your personal experience. The fire is the metaphor for me that everything in my life that stops me or scares me, those limiting beliefs that
Mhm.
are so embedded that they're pre-verbal, or they're literally your instinct, right? They're this instinctual run from fire. It's hot, it burns. And what I have found is that when people walk on fire, so one of our earliest beliefs is fire burns. You're crawling across the kitchen floor, your mom opens up you probably did this with your kids, you open up the stove or the oven, and you go, back up, it's hot.
Yep.
And then later we find out, yeah, fire is hot, right? We all have experiences of some instance where you can feel the warmth even off the fireplace. So for us to go and put our pink feet on 1200-degree coals and not be burned, my belief is it completely rewires those limiting beliefs, all of them, because the fire burns is one of the earliest. And then we stack on top of that, I'm not good enough, I'm too short, I'm too tall, I'm too old, I'm a girl, I'm a boy, I'm the wrong color, like whatever society's beliefs get thrown at us or what we see. And from 0 to 7, all we're doing is downloading our world. That's it. We're in a brainwave state of hypnosis where we believe everything. So if you're told you're beautiful, you believe it. If you're told you need to measure up to other people, you don't ever feel good enough. And if you can imagine, like, that's so many beliefs. But when we walk on fire and we find out, wait a second, fire doesn't always burn, then we begin to wonder, well, what else is possible? And what are these other things that maybe aren't true either? Like, that I'm not good enough is the biggest one, right? Like, of course you're good enough. Who are you measuring against? So
Mhm.
what we're doing at the Firewalk, what I do with people is, honestly, we are rewriting your story. We are taking a different perspective. We're learning how to deal with fear, just like me. When I came out of the Grand Canyon, I was like, how can when I became a life coach, especially, I was like, because people, session 3, we set goals and dreams. Then by session 3, people are like, I can't do that.
Mhm.
Nobody in my family's ever made money, or all these beliefs start coming up.
Mhm.
And then as a life coach, we're taught all these ways to kind of try to trick you into going forward. And I say trick because the subconscious is so strong, right? when I walk you on fire, it's like there, because you've kinesthetically walked, it's audio, it's visual, and you've done it. I didn't drag you through it. It's not, I didn't carry you, I didn't push you. You chose it. And when we make those choices, are so empowering to rewrite them.
Wow. So, I mean, there's a process that, I mean, you do this over like a couple days, right? Like a couple days.
I have multiple formats that I use. So if somebody wants to do just a firewalk only, I have a 4-hour process that we do to get you ready. Well, it's about 3, and then we walk. Okay. I can do that. I can get you ready. I can talk to you. I can speak to your subconscious and help you transform and shift that. Then if you come to one of my longer all day retreats, we dig in. We really dig into deeper processes. We get into limiting beliefs. What are your dreams and goals? I put in some life coaching stuff. We've got the innate spiritual stuff that we all have inside us, our soul's journey. We're in there really digging deep. We go through multiple processes prior to the firewalk. A lot of people will tell me, hey, the firewalk was easy after what you put us through. And it kind of becomes icing on the cake. It becomes that like graduation, rite of passage. Then my multi-day retreats, of course, we're digging even deeper. We go deeper. I have not only a level 1, what I call now a level 1 firewalk, which is about 10 feet. Okay. So about 5 steps on fire, which doesn't sound like much. So you look at those glowing coals that are pulsing laid out, and then you realize, okay, 10 feet is bigger than I thought. But I now have included, I now do a level 2, which is 40. And the reason I did that is because I had so many people who love to come back, because you can always go deep. We're always refining ourselves. They wanted the advanced fires, because as a master, I've walked on advanced fires, lots of advanced fires, and they wanted that same experience. And I said, sure. So on the 40-foot, we go through processes during the day. Again, deeper processes. And then they tend that fire, Ani. And I have found they have to get in there and prepare the fire. And everyone says that level 2 just, whoa, like really deepens everything for them. And then they get to cross 40 feet, which is, it's just amazing.
Do they run or do they walk slow?
Because no, you only walk, you never run.
So what are some experiences with the people who walk across? I mean, what happens to your feet?
Well, so at my fires, I have to say that at my fires, first let me say, people have been seriously burned firewalking. Do not try it at home by yourself.
Right. Warning.
You need to be with a trained, certified professional. I'm a certified master. Okay. What that means, being a certified master, is I went through the rigorous 300 hours, 3 years of training, extra, trained the trainer. I've trained people from other countries how to lead firewalking. And I will tell you this, I'm always learning. The fire is always the teacher. I'm very humbled that the fire has chosen me to spread that and to share it with people. So what I tell people is, you could get a fire kiss. And that would be similar to a blister that you might get if you buy a new pair of shoes, and you get a blister from walking in them too much. Sometimes that happens at the firewalk. It's not that you did it wrong. Okay. Because I teach you how to get into the state of mind to know you can do it. It's not that you did it wrong. I have found now this is my 15th year. I have found that sometimes when you get a fire kiss, the bottom of your foot, first off, has all the organs, reflexology points that come to a head. So like your neck, your back, your liver, all of that, the nerve endings come down into the bottom of your feet. So if you get a fire kiss in one of those areas, I always encourage people to look it up and see what's going on. We've had miraculous things happen. Okay. So for myself, for instance, when I've been training the trainer and we go 12-hour days and I'm speaking and it's a lot of physical work and it's, I'm exerting a lot of energy. Typically on day 3, I get a fire kiss in my adrenal glands, which makes sense because I'm tired and I need a little extra energy, right? So it could be that it's a weak spot. It could be that you need energy. It could be something, but for every person, it's different. Now, let me tell you about an instance with someone that was just amazing. So she has come to firewalks before. Okay, so she's a seasoned firewalker with me. She walked on the coals. When she got home, she told me that she got a fire kiss in her lung points. And then she sent me a picture where I did not know this. She apparently had come to the firewalk with a blood clot in her lungs. Again, I didn't know it. And she threw up in the sink her blood clot, and it looked just like a tree. So it looked like the way the lung works, the bronchial tubes and all that. She went to her doctor on Monday and her blood clot was gone. And, I can't explain that, but I have every person when they go to cross, whenever you cross the coals, including myself, as many times as I've walked, you put a goal or a dream or something that you're walking towards on the other side, and then you walk across, and the fire will give you what you need. If you need a fire kiss, that's what you'll get. Some people don't believe it's hot, believe it or not. They're like, they don't think it's, even though we've been doing it, they're like, nah, I don't think it's hot. And so the fire will say hello if it needs to say hello. And then there's times where you walk across and you might think that you got a fire kiss. And I tell people, like, you may not have. But if your mind is so powerful that if you sit there and think I got a fire kiss, you'll create one. We know in hypnosis that if I put you under hypnosis and I tell you that I'm holding a flame to your finger, but really I've put an ice cube in your hand, you will develop a blister just like a fire was there because of the power of suggestion. Your subconscious mind says fire burns, so you create a blister. So if you walk across and you're like, I got a fire kiss, I got a fire kiss, you may create one.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very powerful.
Yeah, we've had a lot of it's my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing.
And how many times do you do it a year?
This year we'll be doing it 4 or 5 times. We're doing some in Tampa. I have a retreat center now in Tennessee. I've been doing them at my farm just south of Nashville, but this year I have a place where we can actually stay. So I have enough room for people to stay, or there's hotels nearby, or you can come in for the day. I regularly have people fly in from all over to come to that. And it's just amazing. Now I do level 1 and 2 together. So you could do level 1 on Saturday, level 2 on Sunday. So you can do both. And I've created a level 3 that's coming because everybody asked for it. I'm like, okay, we'll do level 3. Level 3 is going to be a 3-day experience just for level 3. So we can really, keep going deeper.
Go deep. So, well, that's very interesting. Yeah, I'd like to try it when you were telling me, yeah, I would definitely do it. I would for sure do it. But it in my mind, when you were talking, I was like, could I get burned? Like that question did come up, in my mind. But
well, so you always can. So here's one of the things that I say to people is like, are you willing to risk? Because that's the question, right? Are you willing to risk getting a fire kiss for a life-changing experience? If you're okay with that risk, because I bet you anything, when you bought a rocking pair of boots, but you're, like I tell people, especially women, right? We buy a cool pair of shoes and we're wearing them and we're getting a blister, but we keep wearing them because they look so good. Like, so if you're willing to just go through that experience, and take that chance, then you should take the first step. The other thing that's miraculous that can happen, it doesn't always happen, is the next day that kiss is gone. And science says that's not possible either. So I show people Jin Shinjitsu, which is like acupuncture, but with your hands, and you do it to yourself, and it sends energy back to that area. And a lot of times the kiss is gone the next day, but not everybody experiences a kiss. It's whatever you need.
Yeah, very powerful. Very cool. I definitely will do it one day. for sure.
Yeah, you will. That's true.
I will. Yeah, I
You're
will.
invited. You're invited to any of them, or I'll come to you. We'll do one where you are.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
Another thing I'd like to get into, Lori, with you, we've talked about multiple times, and you and I have had long conversations about this, are dark entity attachments. And you are the only person that I know personally that can remove dark entity attachments from people. So can you go in a little bit about what dark entity attachments are? And then we, maybe tell us a story, and then I might ask you some like deeper questions on how you actually remove them.
Sure.
And also, I just want to, this is another warning as well for everybody. Do not try this unless you are trained to do this. This is also really serious as well. Yeah. So just want to put that warning out there.
Yeah, let me add to that a little bit. They can attach to you, and then there's so much out there like, oh, you can just remove it yourself. That's not true. That's not always true. Let me just say that. And I keep seeing that a lot in Facebook forums. And, while I would love to tell you love and light makes them leave, it doesn't. And sometimes it just ticks them off worse. The reason they attach is a lot of reasons, but one of them can be you have an affinity to that, whatever that is. And people are like, oh, I don't have a darkness. Well, you don't, but you have a shadow side that also, these can be attracted to. They can be attracted to you for a lot of reasons. So if you think let's just start with how do you know? Let's just start with how do you know if you have one?
I just want to say one other thing too, Lori, is that a lot of times with addiction, when you have severe addictions to alcohol, drugs, other types of addiction, porn, gambling, screen, dark, you kind of like what you like, I don't know, from my personal experiences, like you kind of, your whole energy bubble starts to kind of like become like shook up. I don't know how to describe it. Like holes can be opened up with these addictions, and then the dark entities can enter that way.
100%. Your energy field is like an egg around you. Okay. So it looks like an egg. And when it gets holes or tears, they enter. It would be just like if you left your front door open. Eventually, a raccoon, a skunk, or a human is going to walk through the door. Right? I mean, it's going to happen. Or a window. The rain's going to come in. And so, it's, yes, addictions, all addictions.
Mm-hmm.
More than likely, it's kind of chicken and egg too, though. Because if you get an entity, you will now have an addiction. It will convince you to go have an addiction. Mm-hmm. I've removed them from people who were highly addicted, and then they no longer had the desire. And so the simplest way to put it is, if you are not being yourself, if you feel like I'm not myself, and you may have to take a second to really feel like, am I acting like myself? Am I behaving? Am I speaking? Am I desiring stuff that's not me? More than likely you have a spirit attached. And my mentor said there are more disembodied spirits walking around the earth than there are embodied. There's 8 billion of us. So there's a lot. So not all spirits that attach are dark. We can have, grandma who attaches because she's scared and she didn't leave. We can have lost souls that attach. But I will tell you this, every soul that attaches has an agenda. This is the interesting thing. You wouldn't want something living off your life force. And every entity that attaches is living off your life force. It's draining your energy because it needs energy. So it is sucking your energy. Now, when we get into dark ones, they have very dark agendas. So for anyone who's having thoughts, suicide, having thoughts of harming others or doing things that would seem mean, that's the simplest way to put it, there could be a dark entity attached. If you are finding yourself tripping, stumbling, having accidents, any of those, more than likely there's a dark entity attached. I clear these every week for people. Mm-hmm. Every week. Now, the dark ones, and I kind of rank them in hierarchy. I haven't given them all names, but there are the dark souls that maybe they were human on earth and they weren't the best person. Okay. They just didn't behave in a moral, what we would consider a good way, a moral way. Maybe they took advantage of people, maybe they hurt people, that kind of dark soul, that's one. And a lot of times they won't cross because they're fear of judgment, right? The religious sector has convinced us there's a hell. And so they'll hang out because they don't want to go because they think they're going to go to hell. Okay. Um, and then we start moving up into the really dark entities. And there are several.
Archons? Are these the archons? The darker.
They're just dark. I have not gone into names, but one of them is a black hat guy. I have people calling me about him a lot. That's how he appears. This energy appears. He has a dark hat. He wears a trench coat. He is very scary. He can create paralysis of you. He is, he's really dark. Okay. Really dark. And he hurts people. And typically what happens with those people is that then their friends think they're crazy. Okay. So like, see how the dark can work? Like the dark can then isolate you. Then we get into like the demonic entities. These are entities that have never, to me, they don't appear to have ever incarnated on Earth. They are, because they don't look like humans. Okay. And they're dark, they're as scary as you think. Then we have other dimensions of entities. Okay. That don't look like humans either, but they're just not good.
Are they aliens? Are they interdimensional beings?
They appear to be like reptilian type people, but they're not people. They're aliens. They're reptilian. I pulled them off of people, and they disrupt and cause havoc. The demonic ones are. This is where we see people who harm other people. They typically they're very, very powerful. Really powerful. And a lot of these are powerful, but like I can rank them based on, how much energy it takes from me to remove them. When we get into the demonic, that the reptilians aren't, for me, they're not that challenging to remove, but for most people, they don't even know they have them because these interdimensional, same thing with demonic, by the way, the interdimensional beings that don't have a human signature for people are really hard to understand. So here's the easiest way to explain this. Like right now we see sunlight, but we don't see all the colors of the sunlight, right? Unless the light gets refracted. So all these other dimensions are there, but as most humans don't understand, they don't interact with it. I interact with the other dimensions. So they don't, and our brain says, there can't be a 10-foot reptilian looking thing here, right? Like our brain, again, subconscious belief changes it, right? It shifts it and says this can't be true, but it is true. These other dimensions are there and they attach to people. I mean, I removed those. I have removed those multiple times.
And I mean, right now with our current state of affairs on our planet, are you noticing more?
Yes. And the Catholic Church, I've heard the Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church does exorcisms also, right? And I've heard the Catholic Church has started training more priests in exorcisms for this reason. Part of the difference between me and the Catholic Church is how I remove them. When they remove them, they cast them out. Fine for the person. But when you just cast them out, they go attached to someone else. So I don't do that. I capture them into a big crystal I have. And then I send them specifically back to a different dimension so they cannot come back to get somebody else. I had a client here in California. I got called by another healer who said, I know you do this. I don't do this. So, it's a scary, it can be it's very dangerous. I will just say it's really dangerous. I have been called to do it because that's what spirit wants me to do. And during it, I'm just very respectful, but I'm not afraid, if that makes sense. Like I respect, just like my fire, people are like, are you afraid when you walk on fire? And I go, no, but I respect that that is fire and it can
Right.
burn me. Right. So these entities are dark. They can take me out.
Mm-hmm.
So I pay real close attention and make sure that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But this one person here, I was called to come and help.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I said to her, she was highly addicted to drugs, hard drugs.
Mm-hmm.
When I got there, I was like, you're addicted to hard drugs and this, and this. And she's like, yes. And I said, and they're telling you to hurt people. But she said, yes. And I don't want to hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where typically there's an inner struggle, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to hurt people. People who hurt people don't want to do it at first. But then if you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, you know, your defenses are down and sometimes these things can take over. And so, well, they will take over. So she said to me after I cleared her of demons, I saw demons. I was like, oh, these are demons. I cleared her. She said, I went to the church, the Catholic Church. This is afterwards. I usually get the real truth after, not during, because the demon is present and it's fighting me. So she said, I went to the Catholic Church and the man in the funny hat told me to get out. And I said, man in a funny hat. And then I was like, oh, the bishop? Because, you know, the bishop wears a specific hat. And I described him and she said, yes. And she said, he told me you have demons on you, get out. And I was like, he didn't clear you? She said, I'm not Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first time I've ever heard that. But I cleared her, and she's fine, you know. And at the same time, like I fully believe some of these school shootings, the people who are driving over the top of people, all this extreme violence is that.
So how do we how do people protect themselves from this?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
You know, your behavior for one thing, right? So if you're going to go and get drunk and sit in a bar, you're opening yourself up to everything.
Yeah.
If you're going to use, let's just say this, if you're going to use anything to excessive anything. So any addiction, right? And that's what addiction is, right? It's the excess of something. And so if you're going to do that, you're just asking for it. You know, you're asking for something to come in because you've dropped your natural defense. Your natural defense is your energy field. The other thing is, like, I see people a lot, Ani, you know, until I learned all of this, I just think about people like they've never had any kind of energy work done. And so by energy work, I mean on the energy field, your own field, right? And over time, can you imagine all the stuff you pick up? Like, it'd be like not washing your car for 40 years. I mean, the paint's
Right.
it's gonna ruin it. And in our energy field, we have to keep that strong. So there's ways to do that with good food, good water, you know, clearing your own energy field, self, but also seeing practitioners who can help you remove blockages or woundings or make sure your field is strong. I give all kinds of um, rites and rituals that can help to give you even extra strength, you know. But these fields, this energy field we have to keep it clean, right? Our windshield on our car, you wouldn't be able to see out of it if you never clean. So when we get tears in our field, if you abuse, by the way, I see a lot of entities through abuse. When someone is abused by the abuser has entities. And I pull a lot of entities off of people who've been the victim of abuse. And I'm going to say victim because that's what they are. Like, it doesn't matter if it's physical, sexual, mental, they're all over them.
Yeah.
Because they're transferred from that. Now, why are they transferred? Because that person is so dark and the other person's light, and they like light. They're like a moth to a flame. So it's not always that they attach to dark people. They like to come after the light people because if the more they can recruit or the more they can take over or they live off your life force, because let's face it, a person who's an abuser is just covered up in them. Their life force isn't very big. It's just not. So they get drawn to that. So, you know, one of the ways is through prayer and meditation. you are asking your guides and angels, ascended masters to help you, God, whoever you call the infinite being, right? You keeping that connection clear. And then also you have responsibility to take care of yourself, to take care of your field, to get more information, I teach all kinds of classes on this. Like, so, there's ways to do it, right?
Do you think that some areas have more entities, dark entities, like certain areas, like geographical areas?
Yes. Well, they have certain energies, right? So I went up to the Northeast one time, and I was called in to clear this house of the person had seen the Grim Reaper, and her son died. Died in the house. He was a young man too. He was in his 20s. Made no sense why he died, right? Like he just died. So I was called into the house, and as I went into the house, I could feel all this swirly energy left over. Our land is ancient. So when there's violations on the land, Civil War, Trail of Tears, witch hunts, civil rights stuff, like it wounds Native American massacres. Like it can wound the land, right? And it can wound the land. And then there's these portals that open up where these dark things can travel. They travel through these portals quickly. And, so those areas hold energy. It's kind of the same as if you go, like when I went to the Grand Canyon, holy place, feels holy, right? There's an energy there. When you go stand on an old battlefield, there's an energy there. A lot of times it's grief, right? It's violence, it's anger. So same thing happens in these areas, and these entities like those areas. Entities love bars, love them. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's easy pickings. You got the person sitting at the bar, who sits at the bar every day, drunk every day, easy pickings, right?
Yeah.
So, just imagine, like, it's what we're always told, like when you're walking through a parking lot, pay attention, don't look at your phone, don't go to a dark place, don't go to a bad part of town. And so it's the same with the entities. Like that house that I went into, the amount of violation that was in that house, the amount of energy that was collected there from eons that I could feel was like, it was so intense. And so the dark was drawn to that. So, places where there's been hangings. I mean, just the land needs us to help
Heal
clear
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, heal it. What do you think with AI and this transhumanism direction that humanity is going towards? Are we opening up ourselves for more attachments? Because if we are attaching to something that is mechanical and mechanized, are we giving part of ourselves away, and does that open up to a different kind of attachment?
Yes. Well, like anything, if we misuse anything, if you misuse it, it's a frequency. I mean, this gets into all the frequencies, right? Like energy, just like spirits can turn lights on and off, they can affect computers, they can affect that. We have to look at, I think AI can be a really good tool for certain applications. And then like anything, if you misuse it or you give up your decision making to a computer, it's where are you going to give up your power is one. And then two, don't allow it to take over your life, right? Just like anything else. Too much TV, too much of anything. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see because AI can assist us in a lot of things because it's learned us. That's part of it, right? It's learned us, but we have to remember we're the innovators. We're supposed to be the thinkers, not AI. My AI, I actually asked Chat GPT to tell me something I didn't know about myself.
And what happened?
It was pretty interesting what it knew. It said, in a nutshell, because it was long when it typed up, it said, whether you're helping people through firewalking or you're helping people through coaching or anything, I bet you don't even know your impact that you've made in the world and how many people that you've helped have a better life or something like that. It was very similar to that. And I was like, okay, how did it know that? Like, but it reads websites, it reads like it's look at, there's some manipulation in there too,
Yeah.
right? It told me something good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, I think we need to be very discerning moving forward with this stuff. Right? Humanity needs to, and I'm worried about pre-programming with the younger generation and the children. So we'll see how it turns out.
Well, I
Do you?
agree too. I think this goes back to like, right, the gun in the wrong hand, a gun in the wrong hand of a person, it
Yeah,
destroys. If back in the 1800s, my ancestors hunted with guns, right, to eat,
yeah,
and now put in the wrong hands and we're killing people. So, to me, AI is very similar to
hmm
this, and cars, same
hmm
thing. A car is a great way to get around, but you don't want to use it as a weapon. And I think AI is the same, and it's all in the hands of the users, and it's our responsibility to protect our children um, from that.
yeah, yeah, totally. Do you think? Where do you think AI came from?
I I think it came from aliens, honestly. I mean,
Yeah.
look at, they are more advanced than we are. We have no idea how their ships do what they do.
hmm
Or at least I don't know how they do what they do. I'm sure there's physicists who do. I, they have technology that we don't have.
Do you think
So
that these aliens are benevolent or malevolent?
both. There's some that are both. I mean,
Yeah,
look, you can't have the dark without the light.
yeah.
So we do have the benevolent ones who are amazing. I mean,
Mhm,
they're helping us. I know there's evidence of back in the Cold War when we opened up our silos to get ready for nuclear warheads to go. There's video evidence somewhere that shows an alien spacecraft over the top of it, blocking it. So we
mhm,
don't destroy ourselves,
mhm,
and then we have the ones that are not nice, that just want to take all our stuff, right? They
mm.
want to take our
Control.
minerals and take our stuff and control us. And yeah.
Mhm. So do you, are there alien attachments? I think we kind of went over it a little bit, but I was just curious.
Yes, I have a friend who was abducted. He was just sitting in a casino. It was on Native American property, and he not drinking, nothing, and literally just fell over. Okay, out of his chair.
Mhm,
His partner said he was not there. He thought he's dead. He's not there. They said he's not there. You can tell when somebody's not in their body.
mhm,
Well, when he came to, the Native Americans and he had recollection of what happened to him. He said, I was abducted. I felt abducted. And he said
mhm,
it was really weird. He was in a room full of honey. He said it looked like honey, and he was trying to climb out. And there were
mhm,
things that were with him, which later I pulled off of him, by the way. Because when I saw him, I was like, you're not alone. And he's like, and I'm like, ooh, and I could see him, and they're not reptilian, but they're definitely not an animal from this earth. I'll just say that. There's some kind of weird creature. Okay. So I removed those two from him. They were attached to him. But when he came to, they were all concerned in the casino. They sat him up. He's like, I'm fine. He said he couldn't eat. He ate more than he's ever eaten. He just kept eating entrees.
mhm,
And this is the crazy part. He couldn't lose. Every
mm,
game he played, he won. Every game. And
hmm,
he was like, it was really odd.
mhm,
And the Native American people that were there came over and pulled him aside and said, you were abducted. It's happened here before. We have this happen.
mhm,
So, since then, he's different.
mhm,
He has some knowings that the most regular humans don't. It scared him really bad. I will tell you that. He's very scared of what happened because these were creatures, and he was trapped.
mhm,
Uh, but he came right back. He came back like it was like 45 seconds he was out. But he said it felt longer. And he's okay. He went to the doctor. He got completely checked out. Nothing.
hmm,
So no reason for him to just pass out and fall over.
mhm,
Um, and we have a lot of instances of this.
mhm,
There's a lot of theories on what they're doing and what they're not doing and who's doing it. Now, I don't know that that was a good abduction. I don't think I mean, because he was so scared, you know.
mhm. Do you think it was a soul agreement prior to coming in?
That, soul agreements are so interesting, right? My
Mhm.
first answer about his is no. I think he needed to learn something though. I believe that we set a list of things we want to learn, and then we come here and learn them, and you can learn them lots of different ways.
Mhm.
Shamans and in Peru are saying now, like, we've been through this age of learning through suffering, and we don't have to do that anymore. We can learn through love. Now,
Mhm.
his was more of a suffering thing.
Mhm.
But there are soul agreements. We have divine appointments. That's what I like to call them, where it's a meant moment for people to connect, to do something, kind of like when you and I met, like it was like, right, right.
Right.
So, to do something, what we came here for, to keep us on our path.
Mhm.
Um, have multiple, you have lots of destiny paths.
Mhm.
It's just like, which I always want people to be on their highest and best destiny. Uh,
Mhm.
and, for him, it changed him after that. So maybe the agreement was to have a life altering experience, and how that shows up is different for everybody. But he also went to a place that was known for abductions, so, um,
Interesting.
mhm,
Very,
yeah.
very interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on with that right now, so we'll see how it all plays out. I'm very curious. It's a very interesting time to live, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Lori, if what message would you like to send to humanity right now?
Um, you know, Everything's fine. I think it's all on how you look at it. We're in a refining period, and decide who you want to be. That was my message all during COVID too. Who do you want to be on the other side of this? So no matter how you look at it, I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, we're in apocalyptic times. We're in this. We're in that," and it's all on how you look at it. Like my Grand Canyon experience, so many people said, "Oh, that must have been horrible." No, while in the moment it was hard, it was life changing, and it helped make me who I am. So, who do you want to be every single day? It's your choice. And it's your choice how you view everything, your perspective on all of it, right? So, when I have a friend, or, there's somebody with a demon or whatever, and, how I view that is so important. So, how you view your life, how you choose to live every single day is the most important thing. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be love, or do you want to live in fear? You know? I'm curious all the time. Like, I'm always curious to see what's going to happen. And then we make choices, right? When you walk on the fire, so I always give people permission to step off. If you're walking on the fire and you take a couple of steps and you're like, this isn't friendly, the fire hurts, step off, redirect your life. So if you're in a place that you don't like what's happening in your life, where can you shift it? You
Yeah.
know, aliens coming, political, no matter which side you're on, those are things you can't control. The only thing you can control is how you respond to every bit of it, right?
Mhm.
How you choose to be. Do you want to be hateful, or do you want to be loving?
Yeah, very powerful. Where can we find your work and everything that you're doing?
So my company is Breakthrough Coaching International. I do have a webpage. I also am writing a book called Fired Up and Fearless, and the tagline is changing every day. That's I keep changing it. So, but it will be a book that people can take. It's how to face fear, how to face uncertainty, how to walk through that, and I have processes in there, and I have questions for you to journal and look at. And there'll be a website that goes with that, firedupandfearless.com. And then also, I'm on Facebook under Breakthrough Coaching International. I'm also on Instagram, but on Instagram, I'm under Firewalker Lori. That's how people know me. They're like, you're that Firewalker. And, email is the quickest way to get a hold of me. That's firewalkerlori@gmail.com. And I will go anywhere, Ani, and lead firewalks, lead classes. I lead past life regression. I lead all kinds of shamanic stuff. I'll cater whatever somebody wants. We can do that. So, I love doing that.
Well, that's awesome. And I just want to thank you so much for joining the show. And you have so much knowledge and wisdom. And I hope people will reach out to you.
I hope so too, because you're not alone. People aren't alone. I mean, you have I've spent my lifetime learning how to help people. And if I can't help you, I'll find somebody who can, whatever's going on. But we're supposed to live here in joy and love and the great adventure of life and not suffer.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Lori.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you.
You too.